I hired a cleaning lady while my husband and daughter were on vacation. 2 hours later, she called me terrified. "Ma'am, there's someone crying in your attic." I rushed home quickly, and what I found up there destroyed my family. My name is Claire Bennett. I am 50 years old, and for most of my life I believed I had a good marriage. Not a perfect marriage. I was old enough to know those only existed in advertisements and romantic movies. But I believed I had a good one. My husband Richard and I had been married for 27 years. We raised a daughter together, built a successful life together, survived financial struggles, family losses, and every challenge that life seemed determined to throw at us. At least that was what I thought. If someone had asked me 6 months ago whether I trusted my husband, I would have answered without hesitation. Absolutely. If someone had asked me whether I trusted my daughter, I would have laughed at the question. Of course I did. Emily was my child. The little girl I carried for 9 months. The little girl whose nightmares I comforted. The teenager whose tears I wiped away after her first heartbreak. The young woman whose college graduation made me cry harder than she did. Trusting them was as natural as breathing. That is why what happened hurt so much. Not because they lied. People lie every day. But because they lied for 24 years. And because the truth was hidden only a few feet above my head. 4 years. Inside my own house. The story began long before that terrible afternoon. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs. The problem is that warning signs only become obvious after disaster strikes. At the time, they just look like ordinary moments. Small things. Forgettable things. Things you brush aside because you love the people involved. Richard and I met when I was 21. He was charming, ambitious, and confident in a way that made everyone around him feel safe. He knew exactly what to say. Exactly how to make people feel important. When he looked at you, it felt like you were the only person in the room. I fell in love quickly. My parents worried that I was rushing things. My father especially. He once told me something I never forgot. Charm is easy, Claire. Character takes longer to discover. At 21, I thought he was being overly protective. At 50, I wish I had listened more carefully. Richard proposed after 18 months. We married the following spring. The early years were happy. We lived in a tiny apartment with stained carpets and noisy neighbors. We struggled financially. Some months we barely made rent. But we were together. Back then that felt like enough. A few years later I became pregnant. It was the happiest period of our lives. Richard was ecstatic. He attended every appointment, every ultrasound, every doctor's visit. He talked to my stomach when he thought nobody was watching. He bought tiny clothes months before we needed them. For a while I thought life couldn't get any better. Then the complications started. The final months of my pregnancy were difficult. There were concerns about the babies. Yes, babies. Twins. 2 little girls. The doctors monitored me constantly. I spent weeks terrified that something would go wrong. Richard stayed by my side through all of it. Or so I believed. The delivery was chaotic. I remember bright lights. Doctors shouting. Machines beeping. Pain. Fear. Then darkness. When I woke up, Richard was sitting beside my hospital bed. His eyes were red. He looked devastated. I immediately asked about the babies. He took my hand. Then he told me the worst thing a mother can hear. One of our daughters had died. I thought my heart had stopped beating. I remember screaming. I remember sobbing. I remember begging him to tell me it wasn't true. But he held me while I cried and insisted there was nothing anyone could have done. One baby survived. The other didn't. That tragedy became the defining wound of my life. A wound that never completely healed. For years I wondered what she would have looked like. What her laugh would have sounded like. Whether she would have resembled me or Richard. Every birthday was painful. Every milestone Emily reached reminded me of the daughter who supposedly never had the chance. I grieved her for 24 years. 24 years. I had no idea she was alive. And I had no idea the people I trusted most were helping keep her from me. The week before everything collapsed, Richard and Emily behaved strangely. At first I ignored it. They seemed distracted. Secretive. I occasionally walked into a room and conversations would abruptly stop. They exchanged looks I couldn't quite understand. Several times I caught Emily checking her phone and quickly turning the screen away. When I asked questions, both of them brushed me off. Nothing's wrong, Mom. You're imagining things, Claire. Those became their favorite responses. Nothing's wrong. You're imagining things. I heard those words so many times that I eventually stopped asking. Then came the vacation. Emily suggested a father-daughter trip to Colorado. She claimed they wanted some bonding time. I thought it sounded sweet. Richard seemed unusually eager to go. Looking back now, I realized they were desperate for me to stay behind. They practically insisted. At the time, I interpreted their behavior as kindness. I thought they wanted me to rest. I thought they were being thoughtful. I didn't realize they were creating an opportunity. An opportunity that would have succeeded if not for one terrified cleaning lady named Rosa Martinez. The morning after they left, the house felt enormous. Too quiet. I spent most of the day working. The following morning, I decided to hire someone to help clean the property. The house was large and I had been putting off deep cleaning for months. A local service recommended Rosa. She arrived shortly after 9 o'clock. She was friendly, professional, and immediately got to work. Before leaving for a client meeting, I walked her through the house. Kitchen, living room, guest rooms, storage areas, everything. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing seemed dangerous. Most importantly, I never mentioned the attic. Because as far as I knew, there was nothing to mention. I had not stepped foot inside that attic for years. Neither had Richard. Or at least that was what he always claimed. At 11:17, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed Rosa's name. I answered casually. Within seconds, my entire life began falling apart. The caller ID displayed Rosa's name. I answered casually. Hi Rosa, everything okay? For a moment, all I heard was breathing. Fast breathing. The kind of breathing people make when they are frightened. Then she spoke. Mrs. Bennett. I think there's someone in your house. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean? I heard crying. I frowned. Crying? Yes. Her voice trembled. I thought it was the television at first. Then I turned everything off. The television wasn't on. The radios weren't on. But I could still hear it. A chill crept down my spine. Where is it coming from? There was a long pause. Then she whispered. The attic. My blood ran cold. The attic. Nobody used the attic. Nobody. I glanced at the clock. Then I grabbed my purse and rushed toward my car. Get outside and wait for me. Right now. The drive home felt endless. Questions flooded my mind. Had someone broken into the house? Was there a squatter hiding inside? Was Rosa imagining things? By the time I reached the driveway, Rosa was standing outside looking pale. The moment I stepped out of my car, she hurried toward me. I heard it again. I looked at the house. It appeared perfectly normal. The same house I had lived in for 27 years. The same house where I had raised my daughter. The same house where my husband kissed me goodbye every morning. Suddenly it felt unfamiliar. I walked inside. The hallway seemed unusually quiet. My footsteps echoed against the hardwood floor. Then I stopped beneath the attic access panel. Rosa stood several feet behind me. Neither of us spoke. I pulled the cord. The ladder unfolded. Dust drifted into the air. I climbed slowly. One step. Then another. Then another. The attic smelled strange. Not dusty. Not abandoned. Fresh. As if someone had been living there. My heart began pounding. The attic itself appeared normal. Old boxes. Holiday decorations. Unused furniture. Nothing unusual. Then I heard it. A soft sob. A woman's sob. Somewhere nearby. I froze. The crying came again. This time I followed the sound. It led toward the back wall. I pushed aside several storage boxes. Behind them was something I had never seen before. A narrow wooden door. Hidden. My legs nearly gave out. We had owned this house for almost 20 years. I had never known that door existed. Slowly I reached for the handle. Then I pulled. The door opened. And everything I believed about my life shattered. Inside was a small room. A bed. A lamp. A dresser. Food containers. Blankets. Photographs. Someone had been staying there. Not occasionally. Regularly. Then I saw her. A young woman sitting on the floor. Her face was streaked with tears. She looked up. The moment our eyes met, her expression changed, as though she recognized me. Then she whispered something that nearly stopped my heart. Mom? I stumbled backward. Mom. The room began spinning. The young woman started crying harder. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I forced myself to ask the question. Who are you? The woman wiped her eyes. My name is Lily. I felt something break inside me. Lily. That name. 24 years ago, Richard and I had chosen names for our unborn twins. Emily. And Lily. The daughter I had supposedly buried in my heart before she ever had the chance to live. No. The word escaped my lips before I could stop it. No. That's impossible. She began shaking. I know how crazy this sounds. I could barely breathe. Who are you? Tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm your daughter. The room became silent. Even Rosa looked frozen. Then Lily reached into a small box beside the bed. She pulled out photographs, documents, letters. One by one she handed them to me. I stared at the first picture. Oh, baby. 2 babies. Twins. Hospital bracelets. Then another photograph. A little girl growing up. Then another. Then another. Each image felt like a knife cutting deeper into my heart. Because the little girl in those photographs looked exactly like Emily. The same eyes. The same smile. The same face. The face of a twin. I felt sick. 24 years. 24 years of grief. 24 years of believing my child had died. 24 years of crying on birthdays. 24 years of mourning someone who had been alive the entire time. I collapsed into a chair. What happened? Lily lowered her eyes. Your husband happened. The next 2 hours destroyed everything. According to Lily, she had never died. Richard had secretly arranged for his sister to raise her. He convinced everyone that one twin had passed away. Then he spent years visiting Lily in secret. Sending money. Maintaining contact. Controlling the story. I listened in stunned silence. Every detail sounded impossible. Until the evidence kept piling up. Photos. Medical records. Letters. Bank transfers. DNA results. The truth became undeniable. Richard had stolen my daughter. Not from a hospital. Not from another family. From me. Even worse, Emily had known for years. She discovered the truth when she was 16. Instead of telling me, she helped Richard keep the secret. That betrayal hurt almost as much. When I asked why Lily was in the attic, she looked ashamed. Because I found you. She explained that she had finally tracked me down several months earlier. She wanted a relationship with me. Richard panicked. Emily panicked. They convinced her to stay hidden while they figured out how to tell me. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into lies. The vacation had been another delay. Another excuse. Another attempt to postpone the truth. If Rosa had not heard the crying, they might have continued lying indefinitely. That night I didn't sleep. I cried until there were no tears left. Then I became angry. Very angry. Not the kind of anger that explodes. The kind that waits. Plans. Calculates. I contacted an attorney. Then another. Then a forensic accountant. For weeks I gathered evidence quietly. Neither Richard nor Emily suspected anything. When they returned from vacation, I greeted them with smiles. I hugged them. I asked about their trip. I acted perfectly normal. Meanwhile, I was preparing to dismantle the life they had built on deception. The investigation revealed even more secrets. Richard had hidden money. Thousands became hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands became millions. For years, he had moved assets without my knowledge. He believed I would never discover it. He underestimated me. 3 months later, I invited everyone to dinner. Richard, Emily, several relatives. Lily. Nobody understood why. Richard nearly fainted when he saw Lily sitting beside me. Emily turned white. The room fell silent. I stood. Then I looked directly at my husband. Would you like to explain to everyone why my daughter is alive? The color drained from his face. Nobody spoke. Richard attempted to deny everything. Then I placed the evidence on the table. The photographs. The records. The financial documents. The DNA results. One by one. His lies collapsed in real time. Emily started crying. Relatives stared in disbelief. Richard looked trapped. For the first time in 24 years, he had nowhere left to run. Then I handed him divorce papers. The room became completely silent. You stole 24 years from me. His eyes filled with tears. Claire. No. I shook my head. You don't get to say my name anymore. Then I turned toward Emily. The pain in her face almost broke me. Almost. I loved you with everything I had. She burst into tears. I'm sorry, Mom. So am I. The inheritance I had planned for years was rewritten. Lily received her rightful share. Emily received far less. Not because I hated her. Because actions have consequences. Richard lost the marriage. He lost his reputation. He lost the future he spent decades protecting. And most importantly, he lost control. 6 months later, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset. Beside me sat Lily. My daughter. The daughter I had mourned for 24 years. We talked for hours. About childhood memories we never shared. About birthdays we missed. About the future. Sometimes I still think about everything Richard stole from us. The years. The memories. The moments. Nothing can bring those back. But then Lily smiles. And I remember something important. Richard stole 24 years. He didn't get the rest. And for the first time in a very long time, I finally felt at peace. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. Thank you.